The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Hooray for Hollywood, where stars are living large, in mansions with their servants and their credit cards in charge, with fame that's fleeting, but the egos never change, where everyone's a genius, except the ones who really arrange. Hooray for Hollywood, where the scandals always sell, where every whispered secret is a new tabloid's tell. Oh, how we adore the endless red carpet galore. Hooray for Hollywood, where less is always more.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premier podcast. Damn you, Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfrey. Yay.
You all right there, Mark?
Just frustrated. I lost track of time because I was signing my kids up for health insurance. I started a new job today. I sent you and David the link, and David's like, "Where's the link?" And I'm like, "I've already sent it." So I'm trying to catch up and get everything started, and I'm getting error messages that certain things aren't playing, and it's like, and I already don't want to talk about this movie. I'm over this movie. I'm over movie reviewers. I'm over everything. I'm just over it.
Well, that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Over it.
And there he is, the all-seeing eye, David Wright. How do you do, sir?
I'm good, Mark. How are you?
A little frazzled, I'll be honest with you. But, all right, I'm going to shake it up. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premier podcast. Damn you, Hollywood! And here's your host once again, Robert Winfrey. Yay.
Yay, I'm legally hyphenating my last name as we speak.
Super.
Well, tonight, everybody, we are talking about The Dark Avengers.
David, you wanted to be here tonight. Why?
I ask myself that question every podcast, Mark.
Yeah, you and me both, kiddo. But seriously, folks, why are you here?
Well, I kind of do most of the Marvel stuff here, and I sort of thought, fun Suicide Squad-y, Guardians of the Galaxy-esque Marvel movie, so why not go and watch it? And then if I'm watching it, why not talk about it with my friends?
Do you still like the Marvel movies? Like, I feel like it's been a while since you've been on one of these, and I don't know, and you don't really participate in the chat because you're smart. So I don't know. I haven't really taken your temperature as far as your appreciation of the Marvel movies as of late.
Well, I'm definitely not in the everything Marvel does sucks now, and everything is wrong, and it's horrible, and this is the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of forever.
You must not have a YouTube channel.
No, I don't. I just piggyback off of yours.
Well, if we want to just bury everything, we'd be more successful. But we try to be honest here.
Can I tell you how I defended Cleaner in G20, and I got accused of being a feminist bootlicker? I feel like I'm doing something right.
Yeah, I mean, and you will simultaneously be accused of being some sort of right-wing, fascist, misogynist, sexist, men's right activist incel. So there you go. Everybody hates everyone. Welcome to the internet.
I'm not going to call you like feminist bootlicker, but I'm going to question how your mental health is doing if you're defending the Cleaner.
It was very simply, it wasn't as bad as everyone's making it out to be, and they only hate it because they hate Daisy Ridley, and they only hate Daisy Ridley because they hate what's happened to Star Wars.
I mean,
that was my argument.
Yeah, you're giving way too much grace to that movie.
Maybe.
Well, back to your original question. Yeah, I just you'll watch movies that I seem interested in. So if I see a Marvel film that I'm interested in, I'll watch it. If I see one that I say that doesn't look like something I'm interested in, I don't watch it.
It's a good way to go about this. I miss those days.
I've got the list up here. I'm just kind of working backwards. Have you seen Brave New World?
No, I skipped that one.
Okay.
You did the right thing.
You were
Yeah,
not
I might check
on
out it's on Disney Plus, but that's kind of where I am there.
You were not on the Deadpool and Wolverine. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did. I liked it, not as much as Alexis, but who does? That was I was sick that night, so I couldn't make the podcast, which was annoying because that was like one of my few, podcasts of the year. But that's life.
Yep. Speaking of feminist bootlicking, what do you think of the Marvels? Because I don't remember you being on that one.
Marvels. Yeah, I didn't go on that one like most people, but I did watch it when it came to Disney Plus, and meh. Like it was just meh. Probably one of the worst villains Marvel's ever done, but it was kind of like there's
More
not really
on that
anything
later on this podcast.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything to get that upset about. It's just like, it's just there's not really anything here.
Yeah, it was kind of blah. I didn't hate it as much as the angry internet crowd did. But the Marvels is actually indicative of the same issue I have with Thunderbolts, which I'm going to get into later. I haven't decided where I want to talk about this yet, but I have a very particular complaint about the Marvel movies right now. It's kind of the same one I have about Star Wars, and it's very much interrelated between the people making the movies and the fans. And it's a big problem with both parties. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think you were on that review. I remember you liking it.
Yep.
Okay. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, I had to go pick up Shit for Brains from his job, so I ended up missing that review.
Yeah, I think the best way I could sum it up is I've always said that when that Marvel logo comes on screen, I'm happy because I know I'm at the very least I'm going to have a good time. That's not as true as it used to be, but it's also not completely false.
Right.
Because there's been Thor: Love and Thunder. There's been the Marvels. I didn't watch Secret Wars, so I'm just going to go with that was terrible.
Yeah.
Secret Wars.
The show on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Oh, Secret Invasion.
Oh, Secret Invasion. Sorry, yes, I got ahead of myself.
What did I miss?
Yeah, the plots and titles are merging together. But people that would have gone in for the course that Marvel's on that should have liked it didn't like it. So I'm pretty confident that it was a bad one.
I don't remember your thoughts on Wakanda Forever. I know Alexis was on and we spent forever talking about Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, I'm trying not to go into too much detail so we can actually get to reviewing the movie tonight.
I was trying to have a conversation. All right, never mind.
Okay, well, I don't want to give an hour discussion per question, Mark.
I don't want you to. I don't want you to.
Exactly. So I'm trying. My short review of Wakanda Forever is it was a talented team who basically had to deal with Chadwick Boseman dying all of a sudden shortly before production began and trying to salvage what they could of it and not quite pulling it off. It's kind of like the film deserves a do-over. Like I wish that they had kind of just like let's just forget what we did. All love and respect to Chadwick Boseman's memory. Just let's do this again. Recast for T'Challa.
Yeah.
And then so that one I'm like. It was not great. It wasn't terrible, but like I understand that things beyond their control kind of messed with that film, so I'm, cutting them some slack on that one.
Wakanda Forever almost doesn't exist. Like the way we think about it, like it's almost like it didn't happen for the most part. Like everyone seems to have kind of memory hold it.
Yeah, and I like M'Baku's leadership style of considering what will happen in the future to people other than him.
Third time. All right, Robert, just go into the box office.
Okay, so Thunderbolts / New Avengers / Dark Avengers, but they don't have the stones to actually go with that story.
They put an asterisk on it.
It's Dark Avengers in particular. I'll go into that more later if necessary. So we open with Yelena in the midst of her 40-year-old woman midlife crisis. I have devoted myself to work. I have no family. I have no friends. I drink myself to death slowly, and then I go back to work, and I don't know how to handle this. As she cleans up cleans up illegal.
The only thing missing from that bit was her doing it on TikTok.
Or a cat.
Yeah, I was just about to say cat lady, but no.
She is cleaning up illegal experimental labs in Malaysia that all belong to Madam Viper, or Madam Hydra, excuse me. Madam Viper's different. Madam Hydra, who is just, what a damp squib of a character that's turned out to be. Anyway.
More on that later. Keep going. Doing great.
So she's cleaning things up. She goes back to the United States. She checks in with the Red Guardian, who's living a sad life as a limo driver. Technically not quite in Baltimore, but he can definitely see the corners. Which I only bring up because we now have Senator Bunk, or Congressman Bunk, who, good for him, getting out of the life of a Baltimore homicide detective. That's just soul crushing. Well, I can't get Mark to crack a smile with a Wire reference. I'm sorry, Mark, you're having a rough day. Around the same time, we also figure out what's going on with Elaine from Seinfeld. She is the director of the CIA and is being impeached by the House Oversight Committee, which is a deep exaggeration of how that works. So she is cleaning up all of her dirty little loose ends. That includes Yelena Belova, John Walker, Taskmaster, and Ghost, along with all the stuff associated with Project Sentry. And she gets all of her little minions to meet together in the same place at the same time, very convenient that, and then burns them all to death. Movie's over. Sorry, she tries to. And this is where all of our group of chuckleheads come together, and Taskmaster gets shot in the head by Ghost, because nobody likes Taskmaster. They then spend 30 minutes escaping from this underground bunker, but they find Bob. And we all like Bob. Bob's likable and spacey because he's on medication that slowly wears off over the course of the movie, and then he gets back on it at the end, and that's how we resolve things. So they eventually do escape, and then we find out Bob is the success of the Sentry program. So he's basically Superman, just really messed up in the head. He's completely bulletproof. He can fly. He's got every power ever. But our group of, again, protagonists escape, and Bob is captured. And now Elaine is like, no, this can work because the program worked. So take him to New York because nothing bad ever happens there at Avengers Tower, right? Our heroes try to escape. They're run down by a bunch of Humvees after Red Guardian shows up in his limo. Bucky Barnes shows up because the congressman has nothing better to do than to drive halfway across the country and on a motorcycle get the big hero entrance.
He's got my vote.
Given the current crop, I don't disagree with you. Then we all go to Avengers Tower, which is now the Watchtower in New York, where we get like the world's worst 20-minute episode of The Boys, where Elaine tries to manipulate Homelander, because that's what Sentry turns into. Our group of new Avengers show up. They try to fight Sentry. This goes very badly because he's a superpowered god, and they're a bunch of idiots. And then Madam Hydra goes, no, you have to kill them. And he goes, but they can't possibly hurt me. What do I care? And she goes, but you have to do what I say. And he goes, no, I really don't. I can laser your face off. And she goes, no, wait, that's a different show. But now, despite him being
he can laser her face off?
Off. No more drugs for that man.
Off.
No more drugs for that man, yes. There is some kind of magical pseudo kill switch that they implanted in this godlike immortal being, though, and somehow this kind of works. So they think they kill him, and then that wakes up his alter ego. It's supposed to be a split personality, but Mark and I are going to talk about that in depth in a minute or two. The Void. So he goes completely black, drains all the color out of the place, and now as this very, very powerful entity, he starts sending people into shame rooms. Actual line of dialogue from this movie, mind you. And his darkness starts spreading over the land of New York because don't you just want to give up? Haven't you ever heard the call of the void, Mark? This is what passes for clever writing. Yelena goes into the realm of sadness to try and find Bob. And everyone follows eventually, and they do, and they go through their little fun house. And then Bob gets into a fist fight with the void in his subconscious.
All I could think about was, oh God, we're doing the Firefly Funhouse again.
You are not alone in that, and that was better. He tries to beat up the void, but this just empowers the void, and our heroes all then get him in a big group hug, and we all have a good cry, and that works. And then when they all go to murder Madam Hydra, she's like, oh, but the press is here, and I'm announcing you as the new Avengers. And that's it. That's the movie. Our mid-credit scene is the Red Guardian being like, yay, I'm on a Wheaties box. And our post-credit scene is, boy, there's a distress signal in space and this big flashing 4. I wonder what that could be in reference to.
What'd you think of the movie, Dave?
Overall, I thought it was pretty good. Not great, but good. Like it's a solid okay. Okay, so I assume you want more detail than that. Okay, so I think I think all the actors did well. Like they knew what they were supposed to be doing, and they did it. The thematics of dealing with darkness and depression in you and family and finding purpose in life. That was all great. It was nothing super complicated, but it worked. The action scenes I thought were pretty well done, especially the Humvee chase. That was probably the standout one. Major props.
That's easily the standout.
Yeah, major props for them not having them like brute force win over Sentry. It's kind of like the old problem with the Suicide Squad, where it's like, who are we up against? General Zod. What does he do? He's basically indestructible. He can fly and hear everything, and he has heat vision and freeze breath. Okay, who do we got to defend us? Harley Quinn. All right, what does she do? Well, she dresses like a clown and she has a baseball bat. Anything more than that? Well, it has Puddin written on it. Anything else? Sometimes we can put spikes on it. Okay, I don't think she's going to do very well against an alien god being. But the character's popular character. So at least they kind of went with like, okay, yeah, we get our scene where Sentry beats them all up, but then after that it was all just more mental stuff. I think they kept this one pretty simple. Like it did not strike me like they blew 300 million on this thing, which was a very good call, but more on the money later. I think my biggest issue is it couldn't really decide whether or not it wanted to be this sort of wacky, snappy comedy full of banter, or if it wanted to be like a deep, serious examination of guilt of having to do terrible things and getting through your past. So it would have been kind of nice if they could pick the lane, especially because I don't think they really got the comedy quite right. Whoever's writing the jokes didn't quite land.
This was like the Marvel algorithm. It says we must have joke every X number of minutes.
Yeah. It wasn't
that, and the writer went to the Will Ferrell School of Comedy. Was I'm not going to write anything witty or legitimately funny, but we'll have a tall, hairy man screaming into the camera, and that'll.
Yeah, it seemed to be a lot of let's just do like cringy stuff, like Madam Hydra or whatever her name is. Like it was just like, could she just shut up? Like she's annoying, and I still have no idea who she is. It's just like crappy Nick Fury wannabe character, but a girl. Like, after how many films has she shown up, and I have no idea who this character is or what she's about. She's just kind of there to be not Nick Fury. And apparently she's evil now. I'm like, whatever. David Harbour, like, he's giving them what they want him to do, and I really want to like his character, but I just find him so grating and annoying. He's just too much of a doofus. Like, just turn it down a bit. Like, get something better. I thought it was like weird that they had the scene with Bucky, like where they're trying to explain the whole Bob thing to him, and he's like, I don't believe you. It's like, you fought a giant purple alien man who used 6 magic stones to wipe out half the life in the universe because of overpopulation. Like, we should be way past disbelief at this point. But yeah, like I think it was a better move for Marvel. It's a more solid thing than they've done mostly recently, but yeah, like I don't really see it having any long-term big effects on things.
All right, Robert, what you think?
I want to start with some positives. So let me start with a few positives.
Mm-hmm.
The movie doesn't overstay its welcome. It has a reasonable runtime, despite being badly paced. The best thing about this movie is Louis Pullman, who does some really solid work. But I struggle with this because they did the character of Sentry so wrong in so many ways here that I struggle to really like heap praise on his work because it's good, but Sentry should not have been the character that they introduced as like the villain / like antagonistic force here. He's too weird of a character, and everything that goes on with him is a bit too complicated and nuanced to get across in this kind of movie, and that is one of the big shortcomings of especially the third act for this one. The acting's not bad. It's the writing that really falls apart here for the most part. On the negatives, this is such a slight movie. I mean, nothing happens, which is so weird to say about this kind of film. But we start with depressed Yelena, a little bit of setup. We go to the bunker. We get a fight scene, which once again uses the, hey, let's remove frames from the imagery to make things look faster, which has really started to get on my nerves as a personal pet peeve. Then we spend 30 minutes getting out of this building and escaping. Then there's just some bad choices of characterization. Like, we're wandering in the desert, and the Red Guardian drives up, and Yelena's response is, oh, God, no, not my embarrassing dad here to save us from dehydration and death by exposure. Like, just, what are we doing here? Again, the chase on the road with the Humvee and Bucky showing up is actually a pretty solidly well done little bit of action. But I mean, the one in the bunker that precedes it, just everything takes too long, is too drawn out. The big fight in New York is weird. I actually think one of the better uses of these characters is some of their like actually saving people instead of trying to fight off hordes of people who went to the Stormtrooper School of Accuracy and Tactical Understanding. And I mean, there's so many negatives to this for me. The more I think about it, I mean, you've got DeFontaine, who is just again a nothing character, a damp squib. Somebody thought that utilizing less is more makes a character interesting or intriguing, and it doesn't. It's actually really important for this kind of a character that you have some kind of a handle on them as an audience member. Otherwise, you just shrug at their existence. They really copped out on the Void being an antagonistic force. Oh boy, he's so dangerous. Yeah, how dangerous is he? How many people did he kill? A couple in a helicopter crash. Oh, but all those people who got turned into shadows in New York. No. They all came back. We no balls. No balls in the writing of this. So that's a problem. This was sold as a team-up movie, and it's actually just a Yelena movie. They don't give any of the other characters.
It's the sequel to Black Widow.
What?
It's the sequel to Black Widow.
Yeah, a lot more than anything approximating a team-up movie. There's no arc for anyone other than her. It's just like we're kind of sad a little bit, and then like, hey, found family. Isn't that great? And this solves our problems for the moment. Yeah, we're not fostering codependency. No, us. And the entire finale is an anticlimax. I get what they're going for. Like, I really do understand kind of where the headspace is when writing this kind of a thing. But when the best you can do for discussing like serious depression and nihilism and mental illness is lip service followed by a cry session that would have fit on Dr. Phil, which you actually lampshaded by having it mentioned earlier. Like, hey, remember Dr. Phil? Yeah, I remember Dr. Phil. Well, our finale is going to be a Dr. Phil intervention. Just nothing. And again, I understand what they're trying to do. I really do. I get it. But there is no harmony between the serious, like moody, thoughtful, introspective elements of this movie that are about, your past trauma, your mental health issues, and how do we struggle with that in the face of being a hero and trying to save people and accomplish things and all the loss and how that piles up, and our over-reliance on bathos and Joss Whedon level quips. Those things never meld here. Because, hey, it turns out trying to blend those two things is really hard. And nobody on this movie had enough talent to pull it off. And then there's the, like, hey, these are the new Avengers now. And, God, I shouldn't say I could fix this, because that implies that the fix is easy. But I know the broad strokes of how we had to address this better. One of the major failings of this movie is the lack of tension built around Bob until his Homelander moment. And I understand that this movie tried not to do too much of the boys. I made glib references earlier because the comparison is obvious. But doing damaged Superman is better than doing evil Superman, because you can't do evil Superman better than Homelander and Anthony Starr. It's just not going to happen. But there's a real lack of tension built around Bob, and there needed to be. There needed to be growing unease around that character. And then at the end, we don't actually resolve his problems. This is the equivalent of injecting the mental patient with what's the thing you give him to zonk him out, Mark?
Lithiums, Thorazine.
Well, Thorazine will work here.
Okay. Like, what do we get? Seroquel? What do you want?
We could be here all night.
Yeah, okay. Let's go with Thorazine then.
This episode is sponsored by Big Pharma.
But, you take the guy having a mental break, you give him Thorazine, he drools out for a little bit. You haven't fixed anything. You've alleviated a temporary problem.
He's basically New Hulk.
The end of this needed to be them looking at that guy like he's a bomb about to go off. Because, oh no, like, okay, we get out of our Firefly Funhouse match, and everybody looks at Bob and go, you okay after what happened in there? And he goes, how'd I get here? Where am I? Why does my foot hurt? Where are my pants? Like, he does the confused old man thing, which is fine because he's supposed to be that way. But there's no gravitas given by the other characters to, all we did was like restart the shot clock here. We haven't actually addressed the problem of this guy. And so there's no, like, this needed to end on a more ominous note, even with them as the new event. Like, the music is all wrong for most of this. Like, it's not actually conveying what's supposed to be happening here. The tone is just all over the place, and there's a lot of people who might have like bad days without actually suffering from any serious mental illness who will like flock to this as their rallying point and discussion point around, hey, we can beat the void together. Like, guys, you don't live with the void. Okay? You have bad days. And I get it, those suck. But dumbing down the discussion of mental health that Centria and Bob Reynolds are supposed to kind of engender to the equivalent of like fortune cookie help is borderline offensive to me, the same way Tomorrowland is with, well, let's just think positive. If it was as easy as flipping a switch in my head, I would. Any of us would. I don't speak for everyone with depression or other mental illnesses very often. I will on this one. If it was that easy, every single one of us would do it, because it sucks.
You need to do better, Senator.
Yeah. And this isn't quite that bad, but you're trying to tackle an actually complicated issue here, and you don't have the writing talent, or you don't have enough faith in your audience to actually like do anything unique, interesting, or provocative with it.
It's both, by the way, but I'll talk about that after Dave goes and we do the money.
Okay. So again, there's some of this that really has rubbed me the wrong way the more I've thought about it. I didn't dislike it as much as it might sound like I do when I'm criticizing it, because I'm having to think about it and talk about it critically. This is not the best thing Marvel has released since Endgame. It's behind Guardians pretty easily. It's behind No Way Home, I think, for a lot of people, and I had my issues with that movie, plenty of them. This is, for me, give or take on par with Multiverse of Madness, depending on which parts of Multiverse of Madness I'm actively remembering. Because that's a schizophrenic movie, man. And again, we talked about it when we reviewed that one. But this is, I'm not going to say it's going to save Marvel. I'm not going to say it's a great course correction, because I don't think it is. It's better than Thor 4. It's better than the Marvels. It's better than Shang-Chi. It's better than Black Widow. It's better than Black Panther. It's better than Brave New World. But we're talking about clearing like the lowest of bars here.
Dave, did you have anything you wanted to respond to or anything you wanted to add?
I think the only thing I would add is I was quite happy that they didn't go full James Gunn. I like James Gunn's thing. I just think that it's best to just let James Gunn do James Gunn things. Like there was no jukebox action scene montage bit. They didn't really do his brand of humor. I even think they didn't do so much the Whedon-esque, they fly now type thing, or well, that happened. I think my only problem with the humor is they didn't really have something to fill that void that worked. It was just like, it was the Thunderbolts is based off of the name of our old soccer team, and there was a girl who pooped herself in the middle of the field, and it's like, okay, I don't, that's not that funny. I mean, someone laughed in my theater both times.
Yeah, the humor on this really does just miss over and over again.
I don't know if it's just that we are like, millennial-ish, and this is like what the Gen Zs or Alphas are into now. It's just like cringe dialogue equals humor, whereas it used to be, hey, they said a thing that I know, therefore funny.
Yeah, but the Minecraft movie is all that, so
Oh, quick story. When I was going to sit down in the theater, like I had my popcorn, my drink, and was turn off my phone, went to put it in my pocket, missed my pocket, caught my phone, grabbed my popcorn to keep it from falling, and about a quart of it squirted out the top. I almost said chicken jockey.
All right, Dave. I assume you're not sticking for the money, and after I
No, I'll stick around. It's just I might be chasing a toddler around here.
Okay.
Yeah. So as long as she's happy, I'm good. We're all good. If
I could have a couple of minutes without being rushed or interrupted or bothered.
You are the host.
You think, right? My problem with this movie is the same problem I have overall with Marvel and what I have with Star Wars. And I've said this before, but it's becoming very evident now with Marvel because we haven't had much Star Wars as of late. And that is there's no agreeable reconciliation between what the fans want and what the studio wants to do. And when I say the fans, I mean I'm really talking about like the online review community because I saw this in a theater full of people and it was hard to gauge what they thought of it. People laughed. My daughter said that there was somebody next to her that seemed to have walked out midway through and came back and then left again. I can't tell if people just in the theater that I was in were having a good time or not. Like I said, people laughed. There was no like cheering or anything like that, like you get with some of these movies. But I don't know. It seemed like people had an okay experience with it. I'm not sure if people went into it thinking it was going to be something that it for them wasn't. But when I was looking at like the Neurotic Review, Chris Gore's Film Threat, Critical Drinker, and Red Letter Media, the range of opinions on it was basically oh, this is a meditation on depression and mental health and kind of the state of where we are, as at least as in America, you can go as far as Western culture, where people are listless, dissatisfied, having trouble connecting with each other, and in a general state of mental malaise. And this is Marvel's attempt to speak to that. And then they go and say, that's not really what we want in a Marvel movie, though. We want to escape that mental malaise and go to a place of fantasy, a place that used to make us laugh and cheer and cry and took us out of the humdrum lives that we have. And to their point, Marvel used to do that. It's having trouble with that as of late. Like I said this about Star Wars a ways back, where it seemed like the studio wanted to do some different things with this, Rian Johnson being at the top of that list, wanted to do something different with Star Wars, and the fans outwardly rejected it, and then they overcorrected and gave us the trash that was Rise of Skywalker. I have the same feeling here, where I think the people going into this movie was like, well, let's just not make the same generic, stupid action movie, and maybe we make people happy, or maybe they say, hey, this is the same stupid generic action movie that we always get. Let's try doing something different. Let's actually talk about what's going on in the culture. And then I think it gets passed around and executives look at it and go, what are you people insane? Like, you can't do this kind of A24 meditation on mental illness, modern mental illness, in the big action popcorn, $200 billion IP fucking Marvel movie. And they're like, dumb this down. And they couldn't dumb it down enough for the people who talk about these things to be satisfied. Even if they weren't in a place of nothing's going to make us happy, we hate you for what you've done. Let's forget that for a moment. Let's assume these people had an ounce of fairness in their criticism, and something could make them happy. This wasn't going to do it. So I'm watching this movie, and independently, I was enjoying it. I don't really care what Marvel does. I don't have a predisposition to demand it meet my expectation of what it should be. I go in tabula rasa, and I think, well, see what you got. See what this is. And when it opens with, and everyone's reacting to the opening scene with Yelena, like, oh, I just feel empty. I feel directionless. And I was like, sing it, sister. Like I relate to that. Identify to that. People around me relate to that. They identify with that. So far, we're doing good. And then you go back and you listen to some of these reviews, and they're just like, that's not what we want in this movie. And that's aggravating for me because, well, independently, I can enjoy this movie just fine. I'll speak to some of the craft elements in a second, but I liked it. And I like the fact that it at least took a child's swing, or a dumbed down swing at the problems with mental illness in this country. I can appreciate the fact that it is dumb and it is a child's swing, and that's the best we're going to get, because if you do more than that, you're going to lose people, or at least they think they will. I mean, at this point, they can't even do what they did without losing people to that point. So I sympathize, and I'm not holding it against them. Robert can hold it against them. Robert doesn't have any patience for that kind of nuance, which I understand. So I'm not really fighting him about it. But I get it. I understand. I accept their limitations. So what I got was sufficient. And what I got, I enjoyed. But it's aggravating, and I'll bring this to a close and move on so I don't feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's aggravating that if Marvel doesn't produce the audience-friendly, Marvel fan-friendly fantasy fare that has no bearing on reality, then it's called crap. It's called a failure. It's called a flop. And it's like, it is hard. Like, I remember years ago when we were doing this, I would watch these movies with one or both of my kids, not even the Marvel movies, any movie, and be like, oh, this was great. We had a great time, and we would talk about it and be all cheerful. And then I would see the online commentary on it and be like, Jesus Christ, how could it be this bad? So that being said, I don't At this point, to conclude, I don't know what Marvel it can do next besides end this. Just to break up with the fans, a la John Cena, which we're going to get with Secret Wars, and I can't fucking wait. I can't wait till there's no more Marvel movies and we're out of this like toxic relationship between a studio trying to either do a stupid agenda or any agenda, and an audience that won't accept anything from them. I'm kind of over it. That being said, yeah, everyone else is saying that Pullman's performance in this is like the best thing in there, and he's all right. I think he could.
It's just a little telling when Bill Pullman's kid is the best part of your movie.
He could have leaned a little bit harder into struggling with. See, and that's the other thing is they can't commit to a mental illness either. Like
man.
They don't want to make him full on schizophrenic, but so they kind of lean he's bipolar. But then they don't really they don't want to throw a name on anything because they don't want to fuck it up and get it wrong. So he's nebulously mentally ill, and so the poor actor doesn't know what he's supposed to do either. So he's kind of playing half schizophrenic, he's kind of playing half OCD, he's kind of playing half bipolar, and so again you just get nebulous mentally ill performer. Which so everyone's like, oh, he's the best part of this. Not for me. For me, I was like, ooh, you're hitting the bar. You're not quite getting over it. As far as this, Yelena, I kept thinking about, every time we make a Poochie reference, like, what is Poochie doing right now? We must always know where Poochie is, and
she kind of is becoming the Poochie of the MCU.
That's what I was thinking about. It was like because I know just from reading the development of this, they wanted this to be the Yelena movie. And they don't have the balls to just do Black Widow 2 or just do Yelena or whatever code name they've given her this week. So they have to surround her with Jennifer Lopez's dancers to make it look like she's moving. So that's for me, that's Thunderbolts. I mean, we talked about this also being kind of a summation of phases 4 and 5, but not really phase 5 because it was in development during phase 5, which we covered already in a previous podcast. So and then it's a lot of phase 4 got left out of this too. So it's really only just a sequel to Black Widow with a sprinkling of Falcon and the Winter Soldier thrown in there. And the one character, the one villain that's still alive. And by the way, when we talked about this, the one thing that we didn't talk about was Abomination. And now someone from, the far right end of the internet is going to rush in and tackle me and go, they ruined him in She-Hulk. They ruined him in She-Hulk. So no Abomination. But they could have used Abomination.
There's a lot of things they could have done here, and
I will tell you that again. This probably got noted to death because I think this had a more serious tone going into it, and the executives were like, "You gotta comedy this up. What do you think you're doing here?" So I think a lot of the jokes are like the writing staff just being like, "Just make an executive happy." There's no commitment to it. There's no heart in what they were doing here. It was just like, studio says more jokes, dumb this down.
Yeah, everyone's kind of said this about this movie as well, and I agree. There is a much more interesting, much better story to be had here that we did not get.
Everyone, everyone's also trashing the way they treated John Walker. He's just there to get dumped on and beaten up. I don't want to get into what happened in Falcon and the Winter Soldier again. But again, John Walker has some, they don't, because they have to focus so much time on Yelena and her arc, her finding family. They have to focus a lot of the attention on her father-daughter relationship with David Harbour. There's not enough movie left over to deal with anything with John Walker. They tried. They tried to give him a little something so he isn't completely wasted. But there's also a more interesting story here with his redemptive arc, which they just don't have time for.
Now So again, he's there just to be wrong about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard that complaint.
The guy playing him is really good.
No, Wyatt Russell's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I heard that complaint about the way they'd handled this character before I went into the movie, and I thought, one of the few times I thought this, they're exaggerating. Like, I get what they're doing. They're kind of playing, but like, there's no way he's just wrong about everything. And he's wrong about everything for the first like 3/4 of this movie. I mean, that's the entire bit that he has when he first shows up in the incinerator room.
But you know what, Robert? Though there's no patience for arcs anymore, unless it's the arc for the character you like. This is my problem with a lot of the online criticism. Is like, if it doesn't meet their exact criteria for exactly what they want, then it's bad. There's no nuance. There's no looking at things with any kind of patience. It's just it's not 100 out of 100. Therefore, it's a 0.
Well, okay, that's not my point about it.
Mm-hmm.
My point about it is I thought they were exaggerating, and it turns out they kind of weren't. Now, I'd be willing to go with this more if they actually had something for him to do. But all we get is him, like, again, being wrong about everything, being a little bit too boisterous and self-assured, so that, Ghost has something to do by insulting him, because she could be removed from this movie entirely and you'd lose nothing.
Yeah, everything I said about John Walker, even less so with Ghost. Finish your point. There's something I got to get to really quick before I forget.
Okay. Now go ahead, Dave.
No.
Ghost was kind of the one I thought, okay, yeah, it's ensemble cast. She was the one who just like, yeah, you're just here where we don't really have anything substantial for you to do other than.
I thought you were going to finish your point, Robert.
Things.
One sec, Dave.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to finish your point, Robert, but there's something I really want to say, and then I'll go back to you. So, everyone's like, the most interesting thing that happens in this movie is when they try to fight fucking Sentry when he first comes out, and I'm like, that's the least interesting thing in this movie.
Also, the worst looking. God, the CGI there is bad.
When he comes out in the outfit, which I had to laugh because Drinker was like, his outfit looked stupid. Like, his outfit was comic book accurate for one thing.
Yeah. And I think it's supposed to look stupid.
It's like, you're going to complain about that. Complain about the comic book. I got to say this. Everyone's like, the most interesting thing is the fight with Sentry. That's the least interesting thing, and it's the thing I hate about comic books. Is let's send, Dave's kind of alluded to before, let's send people who just punch and kick stuff against Superman. And it's like, after the first one failed to do that, after the first wave of attacks, after we threw David Harbour like Mace Windu out the fucking window.
And then drag him back in.
Everyone should have been like, there's nothing we can do here. Retreat until we figure something else out. And maybe a little bit of Ghost. Like, Ghost maybe trying to phase into him or something like that, which I don't think she tried, but whatever she did, she got caught.
She did. He caught her. It was just.
So my point is, once he threw David Harbour out the window and he caught Ghost, everyone should have been smart and retreated. But because we have to have an action scene, and of course the idiots on the internet think this is the best thing about it. They go, everyone keeps fighting him for no good reason, and this is the part of the movie where I yawn and roll my eyes. The part that everyone hates and then everyone's complaining about is the best part of this movie, and that is the end. When Yelena figures out that the Void isn't killing people, she has to just go into the Void to figure out what's happening. The only smart character in the goddamn movie, and of course that's Elena. And then she goes in there and she finds Bob, and Bob's struggling with his mental illness, and we build all the way up to Bob raging out, and thematically, symbolically, raging against, the worst parts of himself, feeling like it's only, and I know how he feels. It's him against the world. Nobody loves him. Nobody loves you. And then Yelena's like, nope, you've got people. It's okay. And everyone's pissing and, taking the piss out of like, oh, we're going to have a group hug. Jesus Christ. Symbolism. Utterly lost on this generation. They all hug him. They all grab him. It's symbolic of you're not in this alone, which is something we do say to people going through hard times. You're not, Robert, you said it on here. You spent 10, 20 minutes when one guy from the UFC said, hey, don't kill yourself, call a friend. So I get a little annoyed, not at you necessarily, but I get a little annoyed at this idea of, oh no, they hugged at the end. Yes, because everything needs to end with a blue laser in the fucking sky, 2 torpedoes in an exhaust port, and a giant fucking everyone run at each other Braveheart. I like the fact that this movie did something a little bit different, and the answer was, you're not alone in this world. People love you. We're here. We're together. And they all kind of embrace, and that solves it. Yes, I get that might annoy certain people who all they want is the punchy parts, but God forbid we do something a little bit different with this movie. Go ahead, Dave. What were you going to say?
Just with the John Walker thing is, I think we got sort of the beginning of his arc where we see that he's now disgraced following the events of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and he's just still philandering around, aimless, but we didn't really get sort of the next step of him trying to better himself and put himself back together. Like I kept on hoping that there would be like a scene where they're in like the void, and he just says to Bob, sorry, I was such an asshole to you. Like I've just, been going through some stuff. I mean, we kind of just get him saying, like, you did good. Like he says that.
If there were any patience or any maturity in this world, the difference is we would have gotten an extended kind of New Mutancy Nightmare on Elm Street sequence of all of them.
And they really should have. They really should have.
They should have. So instead of this elongated sequence of them in the base that gets set on fire, and then the desert and blah blah, and all this boring shit that leads up to it, they should have gotten to Bob and the Sentry probably by the end of the first act, and then him turning into the Void, and them going into the Void. Each of them kind of going through their own personal trauma and nightmare is the entire second act. And
I have to say the scene where they showed him just doom scrolling on his phone with his kid screaming next to him and his wife, what are you doing? Like that hit hard. I just wanted to run home and hug my daughter then and there.
So it's funny you mentioned that. So one of these fucking,
for the record, I'm a much more involved dad than that. Yeah. Like
so tell on the internet.
He is.
Take 3. So one of these morons on the internet looked at that scene and was like, he wasn't doing anything wrong. The kid is screaming. Like, I don't know if anyone's never ever raised a child, but the kid is screaming in the crib, standing up, practically shaking the bars, and he's doom scrolling on his phone. Doesn't bother to check to see if the kid needs a change, needs a bottle, just needs to be fucking held, which, contrary to popular opinion, you should hold your babies. And this one idiot in open bars, I didn't see where he was doing anything wrong. God forbid you ever have a child. Fucking asshole. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in fairness, I'm not sure if he was referencing that or Falcon and Winter Soldier stuff.
No, he was referencing that scene.
Okay, in which case, look, Walker gets way too much crap from the writers of everything. Like they've handled his character.
It's a comment like that. You're either too stupid to be on an internet commentary show, or you're saying stuff like that on purpose because it's what's expected of you at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, trying to be edgy, get those clicks.
Yeah.
Look, there's a lot of things that I think John Walker got done real dirty about with the writing of Falcon and Winter Soldier. In fact, there's several good video essays about how basically what he wound up being was a sympathetic straw man, where he is the straw man for all the positions they're trying to attack, and just because he's kind of likable and your positions aren't actually well defined or explained, you just got to do better, Senator. He wound up being sympathetic.
Yeah.
And
go on, Robert. Finish your thought.
And the problem then becomes, to everyone who's able to look at some of what he does with nuance, okay, here, no, he's not actually in the wrong. I don't think he was wholly in the wrong when he killed that guy who threw a giant plunk of. Hang on,
again. No,
not getting into it, but I'm using it as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So that
hang on, you're also not alone in that position, and I think you're all insane. Just keep going.
Look, I don't think it was great, but I don't think it was not what the writers wanted it to be for any number of reasons. But you can look at something like that again with a degree of nuance. Like, what exactly was going on there? Well, his friend was dead, and this superpowered terrorist who'd killed people tried to kill him. Sorry, there are rules of engagement for this sort of thing, and he's not necessarily on the outside of them. You can still argue how, the efficacy of what he did in terms of public relations and everything, and again, the whole other thing. So the point is, he gets done so dirty by some of this stuff that when he's actually in the wrong, there's a group of people who just won't accept that he's in the wrong, because you haven't handled the character with the kind of care that lets you understand the nuance of him and when he's in the right and when he's in the wrong. And no, he wasn't doing right by his kid or by his family in that scene, and it's emblematic of where he was in his headspace.
Right.
And it's why his relationship fell apart. It's why his family left him.
So yeah, if we do an entire second act of them going through all that, like if they had structured this more like a Nightmare on Elm Street, or like I said, God forbid, this fucking movie, The New Mutants, and then the third act, and then the third act is resolved with them, and then maybe there's another existential, see, what I would have liked to have seen is there be an actual villain in this movie, and the Sentry deals with it in such a way that he makes it worse, and that's what causes the Void to come out, and now they're in the Void dealing with that, and then they finally resolve that, but they still have to deal with the actual villain of the movie, which is now exponentially worse. But I think seeing that would have made it better. But again, you would have had people pissing and moaning in the theater and crying about it, about how, what happened to my fun Marvel. Like I said, just to go into the money in a second, I like this movie. I appreciate the fact that it's a child's view of how to deal with mental health, but these are children's movies. Yeah, and it's funny that even written for children, people are still struggling with them.
I think what bothers me about it is I'm projecting a little bit here, so let me get this out.
It's your turn.
This happens a lot with, I'm going to say Marvel, but it's not just Marvel. This is every big IP these days. Marvel, Star Wars, Mission Impossible, Fast and Furious, whatever you want to say. There's this almost like self-congratulatory, almost masturbatory element to the writing that is, hey, here's a thing. We talked about it. Aren't we so great? Well, what'd you say about it? Nothing. Well, okay, so you're talking, so you've got Sentry, the guy with dissociative identity disorder. Well, we can't say that. So, like Mark said, he's got 8 different disorders, all of which present. So he's bipolar, because serious bipolar disorder is kind of what Joker has in the Joker movies, if you look at the actual diagnosis of it. Like up, down, loner, there's a lot of bipolar there. Well, we can hint at that, but then that doesn't actually account for the Void being a separate entity. So, he talks to himself a lot too. Well, doesn't everybody? Well, that's kind of schizophrenic, isn't it? It's a little bit dicey up there when you start talking to yourself. Okay, so can we settle on any of this? No, because this is about mental health broadly, and we'd really hate for anyone to feel left out of this discussion by specifying too much.
Or they're afraid of mental health activists complaining about unfair representation, yada yada yada.
Oh yeah, I could see that now. Way on the other side, because you have the the far
you have stigmatized people with bipolar disorder or whatever. We're not all crazy, evil people.
All complaining that what happened to my fun Marvel, and all then to all the way to the left. But what about the other mentally ill people you left out of this movie?
Yeah. Well, no, it's all the people complaining. What about my fun Marvel? If they make a fun Marvel movie, it's like, this is just like a bunch of stupid fun. Why doesn't it tackle anything deep and serious? Yeah. There's just no winning.
Right. I don't. Again, you guys wonder why I'm so fucking checked out of some of this stuff.
There's a reason why I only watch The Drinker and Red Letter Media.
The Red Letter Media guys handled it about the fairest.
Yeah, and sometimes movie too. So I pretty much got the whole political spectrum right there.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. If you find one guy kind of center, one guy on the right, one guy on the left, you'll arrive near.
What's hilarious is that is that there are people so much further to the right than Drinker. I used to think Drinker was the fucking Richard Nixon of the.
No.
Oh my God! Then I started listening to Gary, our Nerdrotic, and I'm like, oh my God, there's so much worse.
There's plenty of people further around each side of that than whatever you think the end is.
He's so mad about people took his precious comic books and did what they did to him, and he's such a gatekeeper about it. And now it's just one. I mean, granted, this is also his job. But it's one lashing out video after another.
I swear, I don't watch Nerdrotic that much, but I always keep expecting the door to open behind him and his mom to walk in. Gary, I bought you a sandwich. No, it's like, but now, Mom, I'm fighting the culture war. I'm saving civilization. It's like, okay, just promise me you'll go to the job office tomorrow and look for something.
No, he's married and got a kid.
I know he's married and got a kid, and like, let's be fair, like he's probably like making like more money than we'll ever see in our combined lifetimes doing what he's doing. It's just, the image in my mind just comes up there. I know it's a horrible stereotype, but it's there.
This is what I've been railing about lately: is how disingenuous him and a lot of these guys are. Like, I think Drinker tries still, but some of these other people, it's just one loud echo chamber, and it is all just like, well, now we're stuck. Because even if truly inside they felt like this isn't as bad as we're saying it is, they can't not say it's that bad. They won't make money.
Yeah, my solution is just don't watch them if you don't like them. Like, don't let them into your mind.
Yeah. Okay. Or anything else, Robert?
Yeah. Just I don't know. Maybe this one bothered me as much as it did because if you're going to talk about the stuff that Sentry is meant to talk about, and you do it in a way that's like, you said it's like a kid swinging at a baseball. What came to my mind was like, okay, so we've taken the 2-year-old out of the kiddie pool in the front yard, and he's in the shallowest of shallow ends now. But
here's what I'll say to you: I don't even think this is like Marvel Studios' fault. Like, the people who worked on this movie. I'm taking a guess here. Maybe this is my projection, but I think on this one, this had it because I complained about this last week with the Electric State, where there's a lack of vision and bravery in Hollywood. I think this had a very clear vision. I think these people going into this knew exactly what they wanted to do with it. They had their marching orders, make this the Yelena movie. They sat around like, well, what do we want Yelena to do? We want Yelena to be our sort of focal point on dealing with Malaysian depression. Great. Now let's write a story around that. And the executives got a hold of it and went, you people are insane. We're not doing this. And again, I think that what killed the movie, what killed any interest in this movie, was the executives thinking ahead to this very discussion, going, you can't make this you can't be this insightful. You can't speak to this too directly. You're going to lose, this has to be a fun popcorn movie for kids. Which, it's funny, as I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, like, they shoot people at point blank range in this. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. And I'm just like, remember when it was safe to bring I'm having now the opposite point of view. Remember when it was safe to bring your kids to the fun Marvel movie? Like, when I go back to like 2012 with Iron Man, who knows if he actually killed anybody or not, but you never see it on screen.
You see him kill people.
Yeah, I don't know.
He kills a bunch of the terrorists when he escapes. The first time he goes to the Middle East, he kills several of them.
On camera, the way you could actually see it, or not? It wasn't like an explosion in the distance.
No, his little things pop up and shoot a bunch of people at one point.
Yeah,
this seemed a lot more graphic for a Marvel movie.
I mean, Taskmaster, that one was probably the hardest.
Fucking shoot her right in the head, and I was like, "What if you're 6? Yeah. What if your parents brought like their 6-year-old child to the fun Marvel movie?" And now we're fucking brain.
And just to make sure it's there's no ambiguity. Once she's lying there, you see blood flowing out of the hole in the mask. Like, okay, she's
one criticism that these guys gave that I thought actually had any validity to it, then they robbed her corpse. I'm like, what am I watching, a D&D campaign?
A little bit.
All right. Well, if that's
I think there was anything else I wanted to close on.
I do think we're kind of in an era of blandening for movies. I think that the messaging that they've tried to do just didn't work the way that they had hoped, and now they're just like, no messaging, no more messaging, just make it as safe and nothing as possible, and then everyone will love us. And now it's
here comes just a giant overcorrection.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, there's nothing wrong with messaging in your movies. Like, this is art. Just you need to be good at doing it, and we've kind of lost the ability to do that.
The number of people who got jobs writing in Hollywood through nepotism, connections, or
saying the right things, that was the popular thing at the time.
So much of it is networking. It's ridiculous how much of it is just, I know a guy, and he and I are kind of friends. So yeah, and
I have a theory that there was also a lot of cleaning out of previous, more established and experienced writers who knew how to do this stuff, but they couldn't transmit that skill to the newer generation.
After watching this movie, I have no hope for Fantastic Four. what little hope I had a few months ago, none, gone. I think this is going to be another. I think there's going to be another muddled mess of what they were intended to do, conflicting with what the studio wanted, and then it'll please absolutely nobody. That's my prediction for Fantastic Four.
At least Galactus will not be a cloud.
We might want him to have been by the end of it. No, just
whoa! Slow down there. That's just settle down, Robert. Like, let's
just briefly to David's point. Like, yeah, there's a lack of mentorship in the writing sphere that has gone on recently in Hollywood, both film and television.
Well, that's what happens when you call everybody over the age of 35 problematic.
You're not wrong. Like, people lost the ability to be in a writer's room with more experienced writers and to kind of glean knowledge and learn how things operate. And instead, it's just, well, I did a thing. Now I feel good about my thing. And if you say my thing isn't good, then that's assaulting my personhood.
They used to be fathers knows best. Now father is problematic. And therefore, you have a bunch of,
Well, can we talk about can we just talk for a minute about how the intact nuclear family is racist?
Okay. And on that note,
okay, guys, I think we're getting a little too far here. Money time. Push the button, Mark.
Hilariously, I had pushed the button while you were ranting. Push the button.
Okay. Well, I had the right idea. Just timing sucked.
Not so much. On a budget of $180 million, this thing has made $160.4 million, so it'll probably be profitable.
It's going to wind up being profitable. The problem is they clearly wanted this to do more than it's going to do. This is probably going to do less than Brave New World.
I was going to say, I'm sure they were thinking 5 years ago that when they plotted this out, this is going to be our big Avengers movie and it'll make Avengers money. We don't need to rehash the last 5 years. I feel like we do that every third podcast. But clearly, this is not the Avengers property they wanted it to be. As of May 5th, 2025, Thunderbolts has grossed $74.3 million in the U.S. and Canada and $86.1 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $160.4. In mid-April 2025, Thunderbolts was projected to have a 63 to 77 million opening in the U.S., with the target number expected to be 70 million. By the end of the month, the film was projected to earn 70 to 75 million domestically and 160 to 175 million globally on its opening weekend, with some domestic projections going as high as 80 to 90 million. The film earned 31.5 million domestically in its opening day, including 11.5 million on Thursday night previews. The film would gross 74 million in its domestic opening weekend, while also earning 86.1 million internationally for a total of 160.4. It was the number one movie of the weekend. It knocked Sinners from 1 to 2. Minecraft went back up a spot from 4 to 3, switching places with The Accountant 2, which went from 3 to 4. Until Dawn maintained its spot at 5 for the second week in a row. The Amateur, in its fourth week, went up a spot from 7 to 6, trading places with The King of Kings, also in its fourth week, which dropped from 6 to 7. Warfare went up a spot from 9 to 8 in its fourth week. Hit the Third Case debuted at 9. The Surfer with Nicolas Cage, a roadside attraction, debuted at 10. Debuting at 11 was Guru Nanak Jahaz. And then number 12 was Rosario. Snow White in 7 weeks. I don't remember if it's on PVOD. I think it's currently on either Disney Plus or PVOD now. That went up a spot from 15 to 14, weirdly enough. Drop from 11 to 15.
It's like Snow White in the 7-week drop.
Yeah. Captain America, I believe, is now on Disney Plus. I guess that opened back up in a bunch of theaters, probably like in some sort of marathon or something in some theaters.
I would assume there were places that did Brave New World before Thunderbolts, even though they are not connected at all.
No. That jumped from 34 to 16. Pride and Prejudice, the 20th re-release, dropped from 12 to 7. Bonjour, Tristesse, debuted at 18. The Wedding Banquet dropped from 18 to 19, and The Shrouds, 17 to 20. That was the weekend. Worldwide, Nija is still at 2. Yeah, Minecraft might not make it to $1 billion.
No, at this point it seems no.
Petering out. Captain America: Brave New World.
I'm sure they're just all crying into their champagne over an $874 million gross on the Minecraft movie.
It's stuck in the mud. 414 million. Sinners, in its second week, has made 237 million, which puts it at number 4,
above Snow White.
Which tells you a lot about the worldwide box office right now. That $200 million.
It is as depressed as I was when I was 22.
Yeah. Snow White is at 200 million. And should be thankful not that much. Thunderbolts debuts at number 6. Dogman still in the top 10 at 144. Bridget Jones still in the top 10 at 134. And Mickey 17 edged its way into the top 10 at 131. The Working Man rounds out the top 10 at 98 million.
No, serious question. Does Thunderbolts beat Brave New World?
Yeah. I would say at 160 million for its opening weekend and not a particularly loaded May, I would say it gets to 500 million, either, plus or minus 10 million.
Okay.
So that's that. This weekend, we're not doing a Damn You Hollywood next weekend. There's a bunch of streaming movies that I wanted to look at, so I'm going to do that instead with Mick, assuming she does not bail out on me. But Shadow Force will be in theaters, which means this thing will repeat for a second week in a row, I believe. The only other movie.
The real question is the drop. So over under on 65.
Oh, I would say it's probably going to be between 60 and 65 easy.
Okay.
So they've been advertising this Lionsgate movie directed by Joe Carnahan, Shadow Force. I don't think anyone gives a shit.
They've not been advertising to me. I was not aware of its existence.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer for Friendship, which is an A24 kind of weirdo comedy with
more horror than comedy, but yeah.
Yeah, Tim Robinson, Paul Rudd, and Kate Mara. A24 movies, they draw a crowd, but enough to be the number one movie, not a chance. So that's that. The following week, the number one, it'll be an interesting question to see who ends up being in its third week the number one movie. Whether it'll be Final Destination, Bloodlines, or it'll be Thunderbolts. And my only hesitation with that is you lose the families, you lose the children with with this kind of a horror movie, but does it make up for it in the rabid following of masses that are still Final Destination fans?
Well, and it's also Thunderbolts in its third week. It's probably Final Destination.
And that brings us to the end of May. I've already doubled down on this, that I think Lilo and Stitch wins the weekend, with Mission Impossible being in number 2. But by that point, Thunderbolts will be the third or the fourth down on the list. So that is the month of May. Outside of me being angry at the internet, there's not a whole lot else going on in the world worth talking about. So unless you got anything, Robert, I'm going to move on to the critical review.
Just that this is probably going to wind up being marginally profitable, but once again, there was pretty clearly somewhere in the C-suite the thought that this was going to be a much bigger deal than it's wound up being. And
like we said, they way back in the old-timey times, they plotted out, all of this interconnected content between Disney Plus and the movies, and the vast majority of it did not work out.
That's
that's the other thing is, I will say this: there was no way to avoid doing this, but they did a sequel to Black Widow. Black Widow came out in 2021, delayed from 2020.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen, and other than Hawkeye, which was at the ass end of, I think, 2022, I think it was, or 2021, you haven't seen hide or hair of Yelena or any of these other characters. You haven't seen a hide or hair of anyone from Falcon and the Winter Soldier since 2021 either.
Well, hey, come on. Bucky was in Brave New World for about 2 minutes.
So I think I think you're asking a lot of the audience without enough, keeping the balloon in the air.
Here's Ghost. Remember Ghost? No.
To do a sequel to a movie from 4 years ago, should have been 5 years ago. And
that was not especially well received.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it was supposed to come out last year, but survived till 25, right?
Now they're gonna wait until they can fix it in 26.
Well, my point is like the intention was, I think their intention was to have followed up as quickly as possible on Black Widow and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then one thing led to another, and it's so far away from where we started. If you're trying to the idea of a sequel is you're capitalizing on the success of the first one, and here a good example of this, Joker Folie à Deux was supposed to be they greenlit that thing. They greenlit that thing like as soon as Joker, the first one, made $1 billion. It took this long for it to come out. It came out last year, and it was what it was. But the idea was, hey, we have something hot here. Let's do another one of these. An example of one that actually worked was to the degree that these things made money. Was X was received well enough that they immediately went into production on Pearl, and I think it came out in within the same calendar year. Rarely can you get away with a sequel that's too far away from the original, and I think that did not help this.
If you're not James Cameron, it just doesn't work.
I'll tell you why Avatar. We said this before. That we're repeating ourselves here. The only reason why Avatar remains unspoiled is because they didn't do what they did to Avatar. They didn't do to it what they did to Star Wars and Marvel. They didn't pollute it with fucking online streaming content, and it didn't get full of fucking modern messaging that they then had to pull out of it like a bullet. Like just rip the damn thing out of there. Like, oh, well, we'll patch it up. Oh. Alrighty. With that said, here we go with the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Yeah, I rest my case. So the audience score is 94%, and the tomato meter is 88. Top critics, it goes up to 91 each.
Shills. So many shills.
All audiences is 94. This is what I was saying at the beginning, where I don't know, maybe average people really enjoyed this thing, and and it's just a small, select, very loud group of people on the internet.
I've been trying to figure out why this got the reception that it did. And
maybe everybody else is as tired as I am of the same old shit, and this was different.
No. Okay. This jingles the right keys for these kinds of people. I don't mean that pejoratively, but it sounds bad, but I'm not trying to be insulting.
Mm-hmm.
But for everyone who's like, boy, I sure do miss my old fun Marvel, you got the quips. You got the big stupid action scenes that take forever and almost go nowhere. You got a bunch of the stuff that you wanted, and you get to feel like you saw something intelligent because, it talks about mental health. So you get to feel good about it. Again, you are the toddler who got your swim floaties taken off and realized, I don't sink immediately in the shallow end of the pool. That's what's going on here. Lets you feel good about yourself.
I think all you need is a 6 out of 10 to get a fresh rating. So all it means is 88% of critics gave it a 6 out of 10 or more. So you could have tons of 6 out of 10s, which is not great.
That's kind of what I imagine happened here. That's more me going after the audience than the critics.
That's what I'm saying. He's complaining about the audience score, which I'm laughing at because, like I said, I came into this somewhat loaded for bear because I got sick of watching these stupid videos say the same shit after, one right after the other, like they're all reading from the same goddamn playbook, and then I look at the audience score and I go, I have to remember the vast majority of people don't make contrary to what I think is happening. The vast majority of people don't make YouTube videos. and complain incessantly about the same crap.
I mean,
so I have to remind myself to keep perspective.
Here's the other reason I think the audience kind of enjoyed it. Again, this is close enough to being a good Marvel movie that they'll be like, "Yay, happy!" Do this clapping seal thing.
Yeah, like you say, you're not trying to be pejorative, but
no, that one was.
There is something to be said, though, Robert, about people feeling disconnected in a way they can't necessarily verbalize, and then seeing it on screen and going, "Oh, okay, I don't feel quite as alone as I did." At least the art that I'm consuming relates to me in a way that I didn't think it would, and we're pleasantly surprised. And it's easy to write that off, but I'm not going
to. I'm not gonna write it off because you're right. It's not the number to be dismissed.
Yeah, the number doesn't mean it's like 6% away from being the most perfect movie ever made. It just means 94% of the people that watched the film that they surveyed said they liked it.
Assembling a ragtag bag of underdogs with Florence Pugh as their magnetic standout.
Oh, piss off.
Okay.
She looks like she wants to be anywhere other than on the set of this movie.
She's not quite Jennifer.
Her market said she's depressed, so she shouldn't be looking happy to be there.
She's not quite Jennifer Lawrence in Dark Phoenix, but, she didn't seem enthused either. Thunderbolts refreshingly returns to the tried and true blueprint of MCU's best adventures. Oh, bad AI.
Yeah, it doesn't quite get there. It's trying, but it's not quite.
This is what everyone's going to be saying. Like, it's a return to form for the MCU. It's everything we wanted, and it even does a thing that makes us feel like, oh, it tackles racism, it tackles mental health, it tackles blah 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 by just acknowledging that something might exist. Like, I'm sorry, okay, it makes you feel better briefly, gets your cheap dopamine hit, and then realize you're just not any better off than you were before.
Speaking of dopes, Michael Ward of Should I See It called this the emo Marvel movie.
That's glib even from me.
Kiko Martinez
my daughter's doing an impression of an online film critic right now.
Kiko, don't be John Walker. Go see what you want. Kiko Martinez of the Cinesnob podcast. The fact that Thunderbolts has an asterisk at the end of its title is a perfect way to sum it up. It should come with a disclaimer warning people that it's only groundbreaking if you've never seen another MCU movie before.
Not entirely wrong.
Let's see.
Okay, look, if you've never seen a movie that deals with mental health issues, boy, this sure does seem really great, doesn't it?
Oh, I haven't seen him in a while. Black Robert Winfrey, Armand White of the National Review. Thunderbolts is so unrelentingly mediocre that it confirms Marvel's contemptuous refusal to offer anything better.
It's a bit. You're projecting a bit there, buddy.
Also, you gotta blame the studio in some of that.
Well, he is. To be fair, like he said, he does blame the studio. He doesn't. He's not singling out the director.
Disney proper, not people above Marvel. Scott Mendelson of the Outside Scoop Substack. Substacks. No Substacks. The latest MCU action comedy is both a return to good enough form and an on-point metaphor for Disney's Marvel Studios wrestling with the so-called superhero fatigue. Writing this off as superhero fatigue is the laziest of lazy writing, by the way.
I mean,
what year of superhero fatigue are we in at this point? I feel like it's been like a decade since it started.
Well, we're in about, hang on, if you want to talk about the actual fatigue generated by this, it's about year 3 to 4, from what's actually, I think you could point to being like fatigue with all this stuff. And most people get over it by ignoring the bad ones and then watching the good ones. Because if you're not consuming every next product, then you're not nearly in the same spot that everyone who has to watch all of this stuff is.
Bullshit on the fatigue thing. Because people were excited for Doctor Strange, and then it was what it was, and it's not fatigue. It's you're constantly having the ball pulled away from you, and you're going to kick it, and then you land on your head. That's not fatigue. That's fucking trauma, is what it is. People are like, all right, you've already fooled me once and hurt me. I don't want to keep being fooled. I mean, people walked into a bunch of these different movies super excited and only got let down. So again, I don't subscribe to the fatigue thing when it's been 5 years of movies that seemingly intentionally went after the fans to try to create other fans elsewhere and failed in both endeavors.
And now both sides are just super bitter about it.
You wonder why I do podcasts about Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy. What a lovely discussion that was. None of this nonsense. Speaking of nonsense, Rain Jokinen of knowingmovies.com. Marvel movies have never been lacking when it comes to comic performances, but it's the darkness of this one that will linger. You
feel good about that?
Yeah, my review is basically this movie is lacking in comic performance. Not in terms of quantity, in terms of quality.
Wow, there's a lot of shadow being used in this movie. I wonder if it's about darkness. I'll use that in my review, and I can see Russia from my house.
Patrick McDonald of WBGR FM 93.7 Monroe, Wisconsin. Not a big fan of the setup film, but this is a decent team-up origin story.
No, it's not.
With good humor and performances from Pugh, Harbour, and Stan. Louis-Dreyfus is too, but she's repeating her Veep vibe. You ever watch Veep? It's a funny show. Russell seems non-super, and of course, fight porn.
There is no fight porn here, you plebeian. You, sir, have no ability to actually rate action sequences. None of this is all that good.
Friend of the show, Jeffrey Harris of 401mania.com. The film exemplifies how the multiverse saga constantly stumbles and fails to find its footing, with the entire narrative amounting to little more than groan-inducing bait-and-switch joke.
The fact that our big finale to this is, hey, they were actually the new Avengers. Didn't we dupe you with marketing? You ain't Monty Python, and this ain't the cop-out.
Last one, John Byrne of RTE Ireland. Basically, it's business as usual as Thunderbolts is a superhero movie with lots of fighting, impressive CGI, and a 2-hour
Not
plus
impressive.
length. But it's carried off with a tight script, plenty of humor, and a cast that gels. No, I thought this was one of my big criticisms of this was I thought this was very meandering and poorly paced.
Yeah, but this is a badly paced movie. It's just there's no getting around it.
All right, so that's it for this week. Wednesday, I got to do an Indie-Siders with Harry about some wrestling show called Action 70 he wanted me to watch. And then continuing my signing up for things only to hear my friends complain around me that they suck and I wonder why I'm doing them. Season 5 with Jason Teasley. Sunday, Pat suggested we watch Havoc, and then he wants to do a bunch of different scales and things. And so we're going to do Whiskey Rebellion, talking Havoc, and then Pat has a gimmick he'd like to show you. Monday, like I said, it'll be me, Mick, and Mac, and we'll be talking Nanas, which is a new Netflix movie. Summer of 69. Summer of 69 from Hulu, and then One of Them Days, which is finally on streaming. I watched it with my kids. Not quite the urban black comedy I wanted it to be, but we enjoyed it. We had a good time, my kids and I. So I finally
Mark,
get to
don't
talk
you
about
understand
that.
how evil check cashing places are?
Cat Williams was surprisingly funny in that movie, like funnier than I thought he'd be.
The only funny part of it, from what I saw.
And then a week from Thursday is The West Wing season 5, which I just started rewatching, and rescheduled from last Sunday. Rattledge and broadcast sessions, rather. We're up to track 8, and this is going to be about the plugs that pay me, which is a line set on here, and a line that we're going to say now. So, Robert. David will be back whenever Strange New World comes out, allegedly this summer. And then Andrew made me put Masters of Air on the November schedule. So assuming that we keep that date, I'll have you and Andrew on for that.
Yep.
All right, Robert, your douche plugs.
I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. WWE SmackDown on Fridays. We had a bear of a show last week. Oy vey. The UFC events on Saturdays. Most recently, UFC on ESPN 67. Looked better because boxing had like the worst weekend it possibly could have.
Yeah, I talked to Pat at one point, and he was just like, "Oh my God, Devin Haney's fight was the drizzling shits."
Then Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia turned in one almost as bad, and then Canelo turned in one worse.
I wanted to watch the Canelo fight, but I had to go see my daughter's choir performance, and then my parents decided 9 o'clock at night was a good night for Olive Garden. So I did not get home till like 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, Mark, Canelo versus Skull has the lowest combined punch output in 12-round championship history since CompuBox became a thing.
So did he just do the bare minimum to get through the fight so that he can get to Crawford?
He's just doing the bare minimum of everything.
Awesome.
Then after the fight was like, man, I hate fighting these guys that move and won't engage. And we're all like, motherfucker, you've been ducking David Benavidez for 2 years.
David Benavidez should have pulled a great white hype and just jumped in the ring and decked him.
Not in Saudi Arabia. He'd get beheaded. No, Canelo's checked out of this whole thing. He's just getting paychecks at this point, and Crawford's probably going to beat him. But so yeah, boxing had a real bad weekend. Apart from Inoue and Cardenas really revived things. That's actually a really good fight. But again, I covered the UFC event pretty good. If you want, again, my full reports in the MMA zone, or you can listen to me talk about it on the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, which I host, where I also preview UFC 315. They're in Montreal, and it's got 2 title fights, unpopular champions, but that's how this goes. So it's Bilal Muhammad against Jack Della Maddalena for the welterweight belt, and Valentina Shevchenko trying to defend her second flyweight title reign against Manon Fior.
Was GSP Jake Shields Toronto or Montreal?
Toronto.
Okay.
I can't remember the last time they were in Montreal. I'd have to double check. Hadn't been that long because they were in Iowa on Friday for the first time in 25 years. So yeah, tune into any and all of that, and yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks to rehash the next cinematic offering from Hollywood as it continues to burn.
Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks for Flatliners, Bloodlines. Peace. Final Destination, Bloodlines. That's what it is.
I'm not gonna say I watched the Bloodline saga. I'm kind of over all of that.
All right. For David Wright, for Robert Winfrey, I'm going to bed. Be well, be safe, and behave.